America just realized they broke their favorite superhero, and now everybody's panicking because Black folks decided to sit down and let this country handle its own problems for once. America just realized they broke their favorite superhero, and now everybody's panicking because Black folks decided to sit down and let this country handle its own problems for once. Let me break down what's really happening here, because this moment in history is revealing truths that nobody wants to face. After decades of being America's moral compass, after centuries of fighting everyone else's battles, after marching for everyone's rights while our own communities burned, Black America looked around after this last election and said something revolutionary. We're done. Not done existing, not done building, not done thriving. We're done being everyone's Salvation Army. And the panic is real. You see it everywhere. Latino communities that spent years distancing themselves from Blackness are suddenly calling our phones. Where y'all at? We need that energy you had during the Civil Rights Movement. White progressives who told us to be patient, to vote harder, to work within the system are frantically posting on social media asking why we're not organizing protests. Even some folks in law enforcement and the Trump administration seem confused that we're not out here creating the chaos they've been preparing for. Here's what they're all discovering. America's entire social justice infrastructure was built on Black labor, Black strategy, Black sacrifice, and Black bodies absorbing the worst of this country's violence so everyone else could live comfortably. We were the canaries in the coal mine who kept singing warnings while everyone else pretended the air was fine. We were the shock absorbers taking the impact of systemic oppression while other marginalized groups could navigate around the worst of it. We were the moral authority that gave weight to every movement for human rights in this country, and now we're resting. The psychological impact of this decision cannot be understated. For the first time in American history, Black people have collectively stepped back from the role of national conscience. We're watching other communities experience what we've been telling them was coming for decades. Immigration raids? We warned you. Economic inequality? We've been talking about that since forever. Police overreach? Welcome to our Tuesday. Voter suppression? Child, we wrote the handbook on that struggle. But here's the beautiful irony. Our rest is revealing just how much this country depended on our fight. Think about it strategically. Every major social movement in American history succeeded because Black people provided the blueprint, the energy, and often the bodies. The labor movement learned from our organizing strategies. Women's rights borrowed our protest tactics. LGBTQ+ rights built on our legal frameworks. Immigration reform used our moral arguments. But we never got to rest. We never got to heal. We never got to focus solely on our own communities without being guilt-tripped into fighting for everyone else's liberation while our own remained incomplete. Now that we've decided to prioritize our own healing, our own wealth building, our own community development, suddenly everyone realizes they don't actually know how to fight without us leading the charge. The Latino community that voted in record numbers for policies that directly harm their own interests is discovering that political power without strategic thinking equals self-destruction. They're calling us asking for the roadmap we've been offering for free for decades. White allies who thought solidarity meant showing up to our marches but going home to their comfortable suburbs are realizing that real change requires the kind of sustained sacrifice they never had to make. Now they want us to teach them how to be uncomfortable for justice. Even our traditional enemies are confused by our response. They built entire systems of oppression, expecting us to react predictably with protests, riots, and emotional outbursts they could criminalize. Instead, we're building Black-owned businesses, investing in our own communities, and creating parallel economies that don't depend on their approval. This is strategic rest, not passive defeat. We're not lying down because we're tired of fighting. We're stepping back because we're tired of fighting everyone else's wars while neglecting our own liberation. Look at what's happening during our rest period. Black business ownership is growing. Black educational initiatives are expanding. Black political candidates are focusing on local races that directly impact our communities instead of chasing national positions where we become tokens. Black families are prioritizing generational wealth over performative activism. We're doing what every other successful group in America has done, putting our own people first. But America is terrified because they've never seen us operate from a position of strategic self-interest instead of moral obligation. They're used to guilting us into action with appeals to our conscience. But what about justice? What about doing what's right? What about your ancestors who sacrificed for freedom? Here's what they don't understand. Our ancestors didn't sacrifice for us to become permanent servants to everyone else's liberation. They sacrificed so we could have the luxury of choice, and we're choosing ourselves this time. The psychological warfare is intense right now. Media outlets are running stories about Black voter apathy. Political commentators are questioning our commitment to democracy. Social justice organizations are wondering why their fundraising calls aren't working on our communities anymore. They're trying shame, guilt, fear, and manipulation to get us back in the fields. But we've evolved past the point where emotional manipulation works on us. We've learned to respond strategically instead of reactively. This doesn't mean we don't care about injustice. It means we're addressing injustice by building alternatives instead of begging oppressive systems to reform themselves. We're not protesting bad schools. We're creating excellent ones. We're not marching against police brutality. We're building communities where we control our own safety. We're not fighting for inclusion in racist institutions. We're building our own. And everybody else is struggling because they never learned how to create sustainable change. They learned how to react to our leadership, follow our strategies, and benefit from our sacrifices. But they never developed their own capacity for long-term social transformation. The truth is, our rest is exposing how much everyone took our labor for granted. They assumed we would always be available to absorb the worst impacts of American oppression while they focused on their specific interests. They thought our commitment to justice meant we would forever prioritize universal liberation over our particular needs. But every movement needs to center its own people's survival and prosperity. That's not selfishness. That's strategy. So when people ask why we won't get off our rest, here's the answer: because rest is resistance. Our refusal to save everyone else is forcing America to confront its own contradictions without using us as a buffer. Our rest is revealing that this country never solved its fundamental problems. It just got really good at convincing Black people to manage the symptoms while everyone else enjoyed the benefits. Now that we're not managing the crisis anymore, the crisis is touching communities that thought they were safe from it, and they're discovering that privilege without strategy equals vulnerability. This is our moment to heal, build, and position ourselves for generational success instead of generational sacrifice. Let everyone else learn what we've always known. Freedom requires work, and justice requires sacrifice. But this time, we're working for ourselves and sacrificing for our own future. The beautiful thing about our rest is that it's productive. We're not sitting still, we're moving with intention toward our own liberation. And for the first time in centuries, that liberation doesn't depend on saving America from itself. Let them figure it out. We've got our own work to do.